Back to COVID days. Fuck. Yo, living with kids is the pits. Muntu has like flu every other month because these kids are always bringing diseases back from school. Anyways, I'm here to speak about the Lesego Pase and the Oberon Duna case that was trending on Twitter over the last couple of days. I'm reading an article here from bona.co.za. Bona, those that may know, very popular black magazine in South Africa. Obon Duna versus Lesego Pase in the curious case of baby Kaone by Nomonde Smelana. The story between Lesego Pase and the father of her child, Obon Duna, has taken Mzansi by storm as citizens attempt to piece together what happened to baby Kaone after it was revealed that he passed away while in the custody of his father. Lesego has expressed her concern about foul play following the quick burial of her son in her absence. The toxic nature of their relationship, mixed with how Oberon has chosen to proceed following the death of his son, has led Lesego to suspect that something is amiss. Taking the story to social media, a distraught Lesego has narrated what occurred between Oberon and herself, leading up to when she was told of her son's passing. According to Lesego, Oberon called to inform her that Kaone had drowned in the pool and was rushing to his residence to assess the situation, along with the paramedics. Shortly after, she was informed by Oberon that Kaone had passed away and that she needed to make her way to Oberon's residence in Olifantsfontein. Due to prior abuse and the toxic nature of their relationship, Lesego claims that she was skeptical to believe the father of her child, as he has pulled off stunts like this in the past. She then decided to follow up with the police and emergency services, who revealed that no call had been made to Oberon's residence, which raised her suspicions even more. While still trying to process all the information given to her, Oberon revealed that he would be following through with Kaone's funeral the following day, which Lesego and her family were not present for. Furthermore, she revealed emails between Oberon and herself, where he is using obscene language and showing no compassion towards the mother of his recently deceased son. Some users, along with Women for Change, have called on the police and government to look into this matter, as a mother was denied the opportunity to bury her son with dignity. They've also initiated a fund where people can donate towards Lesego's legal fees to ensure that justice for Kaone is served. That's the end of the article. Yeah. Musa Kaul, a very popular gossip queen on Twitter, posted I think it was communication between Oberon, Ndhuna, and Titimba, who is in charge of Amatime, where he focuses on empowering and speaking to fathers in their various aspects of fatherhood. I saw that Lesego herself on social media had been attacking Titimba as well in some of these posts. Before I read his response, I just want to say, man, let me read his response first, and then I'll give a full breakdown of my thoughts. Musa Kaula writes, Oberon Ndhuna breaks his silence about the death of son Kaone and his version of events. Kaone's surname is Peka, after the mom's surname, Lesego. On the 23rd of October 2024, Oberon says he received a call from his two helpers while he was in Sandton, making his way to Rosebank. The helpers informed him that his son Kaone has fallen into a pool and is struggling to breathe. Ndhuna Oberon says he immediately called the 911 midstream paramedics and quickly made a U-turn back to the house. On his way back, he says he immediately called the mother of their son Lesego Pase, informing her of the incident, and her response was she's on her way to Limpopo to discuss the estate of her late grandmother with her family and asked to be kept posted. About 20 minutes later, Ndhuna Oberon says he arrived at the house and found the paramedics already at the scene resuscitating their son Kaone in his bedroom, with the security of the estate being present. While the paramedics were busy resuscitating, Ndhuna says he was constantly on the phone with Lesego Pase, giving her real-time updates of the situation. Ndhuna Oberon says 45 minutes later, their son Kaone was declared dead by the paramedics. He therefore handed the phone over to the attending paramedics so they can break the news to Lesego Pase, as he wasn't in any condition to speak at this point. About 5 minutes later, Lesego Pase called and she spoke to Ian, who is the estate manager, who also confirmed the devastating news to her. Ndhuna Oberon says he therefore asked Lesego Pase to come back and terminate her trip to Limpopo, of which she refused, stating that the trip was serious and she must partake in the family meeting in discussing her grandmother's assets. Ndhuna Oberon says the head of security of the estate called the police officers, and shortly after their arrival, the forensics team also arrived, as well as pathologists. And at around 1900 hours, that's 7 p.m. in the evening, Kaone's body was dispatched to the mortuary. Ndhuna Oberon says the police officers advised them to head to Olifantsfontein police station the following morning to obtain a case number and then head to Germiston to identify his son's body before 3:30 p.m. in the afternoon. Ndhuna Oberon says all of this information was being communicated to their son's mother, Lesego Pase. On the 24th of October, Ndhuna Oberon says he headed to Olifantsfontein police station accompanied by his father, his uncle, and his 2 brothers to obtain the case number, and Lesego Pase had agreed to this arrangement. While at the police station, the attending officer advised them that they were going to need the child's birth certificate when identifying his body at Germiston. Obon Duna says he didn't have the birth certificate with him, so the officer called Lesego Pase to bring along the child's birth certificate to the mortuary for identification purposes. Obon Duna says it was at this point when Lesego Pase decided she wasn't going to participate while still in Limpopo. Lesego Pase informed the officer that Ndhuna Oberon can use the custody documents and a copy of the birth certificate to apply for a reprint at Home Affairs. Obon Duna says he then headed to Home Affairs for a reprint and proceeded to the mortuary to identify their son's body alongside his 2 brothers. Around 15:45, Ndhuna Oberon says Lesego Pase called and said she's back from Limpopo and was now in Centurion, and she needed transport from the mall to the mortuary. Obon Duna says he informed Lesego Pase that the identification process had been completed since she initially refused to participate, and the detail left was to arrange their son's funeral. Ndhuna Oberon says it was at this point when Lesego Pase took their matter to social media with half-truths and a twisted story. Meanwhile, he did his utmost best to communicate and involve her. The evening of the 24th of October 2024, Ndhuna Oberon says he received a call from a lady who identified herself as Lesego Pase's sister, who was inquiring about the funeral arrangements and what transpired that led to the child's untimely death, since they couldn't get any information from who was only posting on her Instagram stories, being Lesego. On the 25th of October 2024, around 1200 hours midday, Ndhuna Oberon says Lesego Pase called asking what time will Kaone be arriving at Ndhuna Oberon's house from the mortuary so that herself and family can see the body and be part of the funeral proceedings. Ndhuna Oberon says he therefore told Lesego Pase to be by his house, as well as her family, around 1400 hours, 2 p.m. in the afternoon, for the private viewing of the body. At 1300 hours, 1 p.m., Ndhuna Oberon says he received a call from Olifantsfontein police station saying Lesego Pase would like to come to the funeral, but needed confirmation she'll be allowed. Ndhuna Oberon says he informed the officer telephonically that Lesego Pase was allowed to come, and they had already spoken about this as parents. To Ndhuna Oberon's surprise, Lesego Pase did not show up at his house to see her son, and also didn't show up at the burial site. The funeral therefore proceeded without her and her involvement. Ndhuna Oberon says he'd like to confirm that the funeral is done lawfully with all the required documents in place, including a death certificate and a burial order. The latest update is on the 26th of October 2024, Ndhuna Oberon says 3 officers assigned for the inquest came to his house to take separate statements from himself and the helpers who were present at the house at the time of the incident. I'm just trying to see if this is worth reading. Okay, let me read this lastly. SAPS Gauteng Provincial Head Office is to investigate Lesego Pase's tragic loss of the baby Kaone Peka, and suspected foul play. Following the connection with a team from the SAPS Gauteng Provincial Head Office under the guidance of the Deputy Provincial Commissioner for Crime Detection, Ms. Lesego Pase's concerns will be addressed through a thorough follow-up on the inquest docket. Upon determining the legal cause or causes of the unnatural death, possible accountability will be assessed. The primary goal of this process is to uncover the truth surrounding the circumstances of the unnatural death. This comes after Lesego shared the tragic account of losing her baby Kaone Peka on Instagram. Lesego brought attention to the troubling actions of her child's father. She recounted how her ex-partner had initially claimed that their son drowned in a pool but was rescued by bystanders. Later, Lesego discovered the devastating truth that the baby had passed away, and her child's father was insistent on a rushed burial. Feeling uneasy about his inconsistent explanations, Lesego decided to report the incident to the police. And that's all the information I'm going to share. As I said, or as I read, Women for Change as well involved in saying they want to push for the fight. They posted Lesego's banking details for legal fees, assistance, etc. Let me start here. Parenting is a very difficult endeavor, especially in modern times. Back in the day, it was very easy. You could only, I said this in a video recently around marriage, you would only have sex with a woman would only have sex with a man, you guys would only move in together, you'd only have a child through marriage, whether you are religious or cultural, etc. Today, many of us get to date, hook up with people, there are one-night stands, sometimes alcohol is involved, and people have sex and have children. You could be in a relationship, of course, but relationships come and go. People cheat. There's domestic violence. There may be a breakdown just in terms of love and romance. There may be drugs involved, alcohol abuse, and many other things as well. Money issues, I don't know if I mentioned. Now, I don't know the issues between Ndhuna and Lesego, but we'd have to assume that they were in a relationship, they had a child, things fell apart. Secondly, it is very uncommon for fathers to get custody, what is called primary residence of children. Normally, it's in a situation where the mother volunteers for the father to take the child, maybe because she's unemployed, doesn't have a decent home. It could happen that the father takes a matter to court. The courts, through the processes of the family advocate, a social worker, and by order from a magistrate, will have an investigation where the child, if the child is of a certain age, is interviewed, where the mom's place of residence is investigated and they go and inspect it. Similar happens to the father as well. A report is compiled, sent to the magistrate, and then the magistrate makes a ruling. This is in a case where both parents cannot agree on what's best for the child and how to co-parent amicably. Made videos just recently about some of these things. Some of them where I was speaking about walking away from my kids, very provocatively saying, I'm choosing to be a deadbeat. I do not know the case around or the circumstances around how Ndhuna got to live with the child. What is clear is that the child had kept the mom's surname. Now, this could be cultural because the parents were not married, or it could be a case where there was going to be a process and it was just a matter of time. There are things to consider, of course. The fact that Lesego was going to a family event in Limpopo. Now, some people may judge her. Your child is drowned, they're resuscitating. In a case where it's not serious, she can say, please keep me updated. She is not a bad mother. The father can go and check and say, no, the child didn't drown. They were actually in the pool. They splurted some water. It's not too bad. The child is fine. You can speak to them via video. The mom carries on to and meet up with the family and discuss assets. We cannot assume that just because she did that, if it is true, that she was chasing her grandmother's money and assets over her child. So anyone who's thinking that, I think is wrong. In a circumstance like that, again, these are all assumptions, and I apologize if I'm wrong in any way. Number two, there were people asking, why were the paramedics attending to the child in the bedroom and not by the poolside? Guys, the story says clearly, the father was informed by the helpers, two helpers, that the child has been taken out of the pool and taken to the bedroom. You don't leave the child drowning until paramedics come. You don't leave a child by the side of the pool until paramedics come. You take the child to a safe space, to a warm place, to a comfortable space, like a bedroom. And the father did say he made a U-turn, heading back, spoke to the paramedics, whoever was in charge at the estate, and at some point the police got involved. So some people that were asking, why were the paramedics attending to the child in a bedroom and not by the poolside? It's just silly. There's a sequence of events and you need to follow them. I appreciate, if true, Ndhuna's account, that at every single juncture, he was updating the mom. And even where the child was declared dead, Instead of doing it himself, considering especially that he was not in a good emotional state, he gave it to the paramedics to speak to her. She now, Lesego, could dispute this. I never spoke to paramedics. He did not update me. There was no confirmation with the police. Even the incident of the birth certificate, she can say no. No one ever called me from the Olifantsfontein police station, and that can be her account. This is why you take statements. Unfortunately, because relationships break down, because people break up, because there's toxicity for whatever reason, people tend to weaponize children in various ways. And outside of weaponizing children, you have this thing of you guys become enemies, where you guys were once lovers. Now you hate each other's guts. And you will use whatever evidence is available to paint the other person in a bad light. Sadly, the courts prefer you to paint the other parents in a bad light, where you're fighting for primary residence / custody. Because if you're like, well, she's a good mother, she's amazing, I just think the child is better with me. No magistrate's going to rule. You'll have to find something more substantial. She's addicted to drugs. She's once abandoned the kids. I've got proof at school. She once did this. She's once beaten the kids, so that you paint the person in a bad light. So I'm not surprised of Lesego sharing emails where Ndhuna is being vulgar and obscene. Very wrong of him. But speaking from experience, my own and many others, I know when relationships break down. I know when people break up, when children are involved, sometimes the language becomes very, very spicy. People swear at you that, fuck you, I never wanted this child in the first place, you don't even send money, I fucking never loved you, you're such a piece of shit mom, you're a useless father with all your bitches. It gets really, really vile. That's human nature and it's not right. The sad thing at the end of the day is that this child here has passed away, as far as we know. Some people are now saying things. Number one, that Ndhuna is a foreigner. Ndhuna is not a foreigner. He's a South African. This is known. Many, many people know. And it's said that people will take names like Ndhuna, Oberon, or Obon Duna, and then automatically assume that it's an African foreigner. And because of xenophobia in South Africa, you then have all these things that are attached to this person. Number two, many people are asking as well, how does the father get custody? And that's one of the questions that's going to need to be uncovered. How did the mom lose primary residence or custody of the child? Was she really going to Limpopo? Was she actually helpful when the father was looking for information? The rushing of a burial is something that is done in the Jewish and the Muslim communities. In the Muslim communities, you could die in the morning and be buried before the sun sets. The Jewish community, I think it happens a day or 2 days after. It is done very speedily. A lot of them don't normally do postmortems. I think in the Muslim community, they don't even use a coffin. They wrap you in a cloth. These things happen. So one of the questions that was asked is this guy Muslim? We do not have confirmation that he was, but it can happen that you can bury very quickly if you feel it is best. Now, we can ask a question. Why could he not wait a day or two for the mom to be available with her family? He would need to explain, is it cultural? Is it religious? And if so, can you not delay? You know, in the space of high emotional states, anger, disappointment, frustration, there needs to be some level of humanity. And if it is not for the father, it is for the people around him to be like, bro, listen, this could be you. The mother could have been with the child. The child could have drowned in the mom's care. And you could be driving from somewhere. And if it means just delaying the funeral by 1 day, 2 days, I'd like to think you would have expected the mom to do the same. So not only for Ndhuna, but for everyone around him, they should have, even if people are swearing at each other, going to the police, accusing each other of things, going on social media, the right thing to do in this instance would have been to wait and delay by at least 1 day. So I feel like he was wrong. This is my personal opinion. I feel like he was wrong to do that because the child is now in the ground. The mom never got to see the child, kiss the child, hold her son for the last time. And I feel that is wrong, even if he was Muslim, even if he was Jewish, even if it was cultural, even if it was whatever. The mom had a right. And I'd like to think even if there was no foul play from his side, I think a fair magistrate and a court order could be like, we'd like the body resumed, not for anything else, but for the mom to be satisfied and to have closure, and for the dignity of the mother and her family to see this child. Sadly, there are many instances of women in South Africa that bury children without the father present. Sometimes they don't even inform the father because, again, it becomes toxic and vile, and there's a huge breakdown. Families really need to step up in times like this, and someone needs to be sober-minded. someone needs to be the calm head to be like, no, let's wait, please. I understand these things need to happen, and I understand people are traumatized. I understand. And the child drowned. I'd like to think the child wasn't in a horrific car accident where their limbs were split up or they were tragically burnt, the child that drowned, which I'd like to think the body, the cadaver was still in decent condition for the mom to see and hold the child, kiss the child along with her family as well. Even if the mom, for whatever reason, was on drugs, was an unfit mother, it doesn't matter. This is the mother of the child. In the same way, I would fight as aggressively, and my opinion would be the same for many, many fathers out there who are not invited to funerals, who are not allowed to bury their children, who are not informed, etc. It is wrong. So we'll see how this carries on. Along with being accused of being a foreigner falsely, is also this accusation that Ndhuna uthwale ngengane. Because he's got money, he lives in an estate, he's rich, clearly he sacrificed his child for money, because people believe in witchcraft. A similar thing was said of Ugogo's Koteni and the loss of her son, Umonde Jr. Very tragically. Many other people have said the same elsewhere. I do not know this guy from a bar of soap, but from the little bit that you read from these little bits of story, he managed to convince a magistrate to give him custody, whether because he's rich or maybe because he is the better parent at the time for the child. He had 2 helpers for the child. 2 helpers, not even one. Number 3, he wasn't with the child when the child fell into a pool and drowned. There is negligence. Some people will have to account, maybe the helpers, but he wasn't even there to say maybe he was alone with the child when the child drowned, where you could be like, maybe this guy did something to the child. He wasn't even present at the time. So the people that are saying this are people that obviously are being spicy on social media, people that believe in witchcraft and the like, and it just doesn't help in this situation with the trauma and everything that's going on. Recently, I posted about walking away from my children, 3 of my children out of the 7. I spoke about the issues that I'd have with baby mamas, 2 of them. I'd speak about the issues that we just have in co-parenting. And one of the comments that had come through was someone saying, where the parents cannot happily, peacefully co-parent, the child must be taken away to an orphanage. I thought it was harsh, and I've reworked this from orphanage to boarding school. In a situation where this child was not living with the father, Ndhuna, or the mom, Lesego, and was living with an impartial third party, it could be a grandfather, a grandmother, it could be an orphanage, it could be a boarding school, depending on the age. That means both parents have an equal access in a neutral space to see the child. It's really one of the things we need to look into our legal processes. I recently watched the latest episode of Diary of a CEO, and I think his name is James, or something along those lines, one of the most famous divorce lawyers in the world. And he was speaking about this whole dynamic of how children are weaponized in divorce proceedings. Divorce lawyer, he started on Soft White's Underbelly. I just want to get his name because he's actually quite brilliant. James Sexton. His name is James Sexton. In a situation where the parents are failing to stay together, ideally you want parents that are married, living together, if they cannot happily co-parent, either because the mom doesn't trust the father, or the father doesn't trust the mom, or whatever dynamic, or they're constantly fighting, swearing at each other in emails, sending each other vile texts, etc., where people are keeping each other from the child, child access, parental alienation, a court should step in as I don't know if you'd call it the custodian, but as the final guardian of the child, because the child is young, they're underage, they can't speak for themselves, to be like, we will protect the child's rights under the Children's Act. And because you guys are failing to get along, we will take the child away. We still want what's best for the child, but what's happening now is not best. Mom is keeping baby from father, father is keeping baby from mom. They are fighting. This is not what's best for the child. We will do secondary or tertiary best. We'll take the child, put them in an orphanage. You guys can visit them at your leisure anytime that is reasonable. But you guys have equal access, and it's not one over the other because you guys have failed. We tried, you guys, you failed. Or we put the child in a boarding school where on weekends you can go visit the child. Sometimes in the afternoons at school, whether they're going to practice or just before they go to study, etc., you can go visit the child anytime. School holidays, Easter, winter holidays, spring, we call it Easter. I guess you call them autumn holidays, the winter holidays, the spring holidays, the summer holidays. You guys can then take turns. This holiday goes to mom, this holiday goes to dad, this depending on who's available. If dad's not available the whole year, mom will have the child during all those holidays, and we track these things. And it's fair. It's not ideal for the child, but I can tell you now that anyone who thinks that a child should rather live with the mom, even if the mom is keeping the father from seeing and enjoying and bonding with the child, that person is not putting the child's best interest first. It should be up to the parent that does not live with the child to say, no, you know what? If you're going to put my child in an orphanage, if you're going to put my child in boarding school, it's fine. I'd rather the child lives with the mother, even if I struggle with access. But if ever I go back to court and I'm like, but the mom is not allowing me to see my child, speak to my child, the mom is causing issues, the mom is misusing maintenance money, then the court should come in and say, now we don't care about the both of you. Now we're sending the child to an orphanage or to boarding school because you guys have failed. In that way, the child is with other kids, they're happy, they've got a warden or a matron or whoever it is, they're in a school space, they go to school, they laugh with other kids, the afternoons they have sports, they have culture, etc. And in South Africa, considering how many children attend no-fee schools, I think government needs to look into creating boarding schools at all the no-fee schools. Because a lot of these kids get their only meal at school, and then they go home to poverty, to substance abuse, to domestic violence, to just horrific circumstances. If mom and dad cannot take care of the child, for whatever reason, it's been proven by social workers that they are not really what's best for the child. It may be best for the child to be in a boarding school with other kids in a safe environment that is conducive, where there are facilities, where they play, where they learn, where they thrive. The two most expensive and arguably some of the best schools in the country, Hilton College and Michael House in KZN, are both full boarding schools. No one looks at those schools and thinks that the children are not loved. No one looks at those schools and thinks that the children are being abused or oppressed or that their parents are not doing best. Everyone believes that the parents that can afford to send their children to Hilton and Michael House are parents that have the means, that are smart, that are capable and want what's best for their kids. I'm not saying all boarding schools are Michael House or Hilton. I'm just trying to draw a parallel before someone says, but boarding schools are trash. Sometimes living with mom is trash. Sometimes living with dad is trash. You may be getting abused by your stepmother. You may be getting abused by your stepfather. Your own parents might be abusing you in various ways. Your half siblings, your step siblings, etc. In a school environment, we're assuming, outside of bullying and outside of other abuse from teachers, that at least they are kids, and it's in a space where we are all equal as kids. No one has got their mommy here. No one has got their daddy here. We are all equal here, and we're all here to look out for each other. Very sad and tragic story. I really hope they will find some level of peace. The two of them, they lost a child, Kaone, Peka. I hope Lesego Pase finds healing through all of this. And if there is an injustice, I hope she finds justice. And Ndhuna, or whoever's involved, pays. I hope Ndhuna finds peace and healing in this time. Having tried his best, I'd like to believe, for his child. If there was negligence on the part of the helpers, very sad. But unfortunately, they will have to account, because negligence is a crime, sadly. They would need to prove that they did the best to ensure the child was safe. And if that's not the case, the paramedics obviously would have to give their report on that they tried to resuscitate the child and there's nothing that they could do. And I really hope that the families on both sides are going to take stock of where they failed, both parents and the child, where they could have come together to make sure that there's peace and harmony. Where if Lesego and Ndhuna are fighting, the Gogos or the Mkulus on both sides can come together and say, look, we will do what is best for the child and come in and intervene. No, Ndhuna, don't bury the child. The mother needs to see the child first. No, if Lesego and Ndhuna can't communicate respectfully and in a civil manner, get someone else to liaise with this guy. And maybe if he's not in a good state, get them to liaise with someone else on his family side so that there's peace and harmony. Unfortunately, we live in a time, modern times, where we have too much freedom, where you can hook up with the girl on a Friday night, can have sex with her that night. She's pregnant. You guys never see each other again, or at least for that time. Next thing, she hits you up, I'm pregnant, I have a child, please abort. She refuses to abort. Or she doesn't know, she finds out later she's pregnant. You guys have a very, very tough co-parenting or trying to co-parent. It falls apart. The child is living with one parent over another. You're fighting, there's parental alienation, there's fights around maintenance, etc. And it becomes a mess. We all really need to do better, all of us, including myself. I know that I've tried to fight for my children. I've tried to be the best father I can be. Anyone who has seen me with my children, anyone who knows my story would know I've tried. I will say, because it's my side of the story, they can give theirs, that the two mothers in particular I've spoken about, I do not think they've tried their best. And I have said before that I do hope they have a change of heart. I do hope their families somehow get through to them to be like, Penwell really loves his kids. Penwell's really trying for his kids. Please, can we try something else? And if that doesn't work, maybe someone can whisper in the mother's ears, what if the kids go to boarding school? Which would be great for me, because then I can go to the school directly without having to liaise with the mom. I liaise with the school, I liaise with the leadership of the school. I see my kids on weekends, I see my kids on evenings, or afternoons and evenings, and where possible, I see them during school holidays. Because for whatever reason, we are struggling to get along. And the people around us are struggling to get us to get along. And we are fucking up and destroying our children for the future. And we're continuing with this vicious cycle that many of us were born into, but we're now perpetuating it even further. And where we thought we would be better parents, we are doing exactly as our parents, and we're destroying our kids. Tomorrow, when our kids need therapy, when our kids are on drugs, when our kids are terrorists or criminals, it's going to look like a big shock, but it's like we should have done better. It is easier to fix problematic children than to try and repair broken men when they're adults. It is easier to raise children that are better citizens, better human beings, than to try and repair a serial killer, serial rapist like a Moses Tole, who we spoke about on the latest episode of the Convo Show. That's all I have to say. Looking forward to reading your comments. And let's keep all of these people in our thoughts, in our prayers, and let's hope that there's some type of peace that happens. And if you are a parent co-parenting, if you are struggling with parental alienation, if you are a parent that's responsible for keeping a child from their parents, I really hope you will have a change of heart. I hope you will get counseling and therapy. I hope you'll try and reach out to the other parent or to the other parent's family. Speak to your family and try and find help. There's an innocent child in the middle of all these stupid and dumb decisions we make. And the least we can do is try to be better. And where we are failing, can we let go of responsibility and give the children to people that are better suited, smarter, more calm, more capable, more resourced for the betterment of this child? Penwell the Black Bear, and have a great and blessed afternoon. Cheers.